be a up-close whispering and latex glove whisper, and I think I'm going to be reading Lord of the Rings today. I have Harry Potter with me, but I don't feel like reading that right now. So this is Lord of the Rings. This is all of them, I think, in one book. It's a lot of pages. It's kind of heavy. Actually, it is heavy. I'm gonna try not to be too loud with this. So it has over 1,000 pages in this book. I don't know how far I'll get with this, but I'm gonna be putting my gloves on, and then hopefully it sounds kind of good with like flipping pages and then latex gloves. If you have any other requests for latex glove noises, just let me know, and I'll be sure to consider that. If you can see the tape on the thing, it's because it has a blue flashing light, and it's kind of annoying, so I didn't want you guys to have to stare at that like throughout this whole video, so I put tape over it, and hopefully that helps. So, okay. So yeah, this is J.R.R. Tolkien. I don't know if I said that right. The Lord of the Rings, the complete best-selling classic, now an epic motion picture trilogy. Please excuse if I mispronounce anything. Sometimes I have trouble, so hopefully this goes smoothly. If not, I apologize in advance. So I'm gonna start. I'm not gonna read the prologue and stuff. Let's just get straight to the stuff. And I have seen the movies. To be honest, though, I've never read the books, so this is gonna be my first time reading it. Okay. Chapter 1. A long-expected party. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Back End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 11th first birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar, and had been the wonder of Shire for 60 years, ever since his remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. The riches he had brought back from his travels had now become a local legend, and it was popularly believed, whatever the old folk might say, that the hill at Bag End was full of tunnels stuffed with treasure. And if that was not enough for fame, there was also his prologued vigor to marvel at. Time wore on, but it seemed to have little effect on Mr. Baggins. At 90, he was much the same as at 50. At 99, they began to call him the well-preserved but unchanged, would have been nearer the mark. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing. It seemed unfair that anyone should possess, apparently, perpetual youth, as well as reputedly inexhaustible wealth. It will have had to be paid for, they said. It isn't natural, and trouble will come of it. But so far trouble had not come, and as Mr. Baggins was generous with his money, most people were willing to forgive his oddities and his good fortune. He remained on visiting terms with his relatives, except, of course, the Sackville Bagginses, and he had many devoted admirers among the hobbits of poor and unimportant families. But he had no close friends until some of his younger cousins began to grow up. The eldest of three, and Bilbo's favorite, was young Frodo Baggins. When Bilbo was 99, he adopted Frodo as his heir and brought him to live at Bag End, celebrate our birthday parties comfortably together. At the time Frodo was still in his tweens, as the hobbits called their irresponsible 20s between childhood and the coming of age of 33. 12 more years passed. Each year the Bagginses had given very lively combined birthday parties at Bag End, but now it was understood that something quite exceptional was being planned for that autumn. Bilbo was going to be 111, a rather curious number, and a very respectable age for a hobbit. The old took himself had only reached 130, and Frodo was going to be 33. An important number, the date of his coming of age. Tongues began to wag in Hobbiton and Bywater, and rumor of the coming event traveled all over the Shire. The history of character of Mr. Bilbo Baggins became once again the chief topic of conversation, and the older folk suddenly found their reminiscences in welcome demand. No one had a more attentive audience than old Ham Gamgee, commonly known as the Gaffer. He held forth at the Ivy Bush, the small inn on the Bywater Road, and he spoke with some authority, for he attended the garden at Bag End for 40 years, and had helped the old Holman in the same job before that. Now that he was himself growing old and stiff in the joints, the job was mainly carried on by his youngest son, Sam Gamgee. Both father and son were on the friendly terms with Bilbo and Frodo. They lived on the hill itself, in number 3 Backshot Road, just below Bag End. A very nice, well-spoken, gentle hobbit is Mr. Bilbo, as I've always said, the Gaffer declared, with perfect truth, for Bilbo was very polite to him, calling him Master Handfast, and consulting him constantly upon the growing of vegetables. In the matter of fruits, especially potatoes, the Gaffer was recognized as the leading authority by all in the neighborhood, including himself. But what about this Frodo that lives with him? Asked old Nooks of Bywater. Baggins is in his name, but he's more than half a brandy buck, they say. It beats me why any Baggins of Hobbiton should go looking for a wife away there in Buckland, where folks are so queer. And no wonder they're queer, put in Daddy Two-Foot, the Gaffer's next door neighbor, if they live on the wrong side of Brandywine River, and right again the old forest. That's a dark, bad place. And half the tale be true. You're right, Dad, said the Gaffer. Not that the brandy bucks of Buckland live in the old forest, but they're queer breed seemingly. They fool around with the boats on that big river, and that isn't natural. Small wonder that trouble came of it, I say. But be that as it may, Mr. Frodo is a nice young hobbit, as you could wish to meet, very much like Mr. Bilbo, and in more than looks. After all, this father was a Baggins. A decent, respectable hobbit was Mr. Drogo Baggins. There was never much to tell him till he was drowned, said several voices. They'd have heard of this and other dark rumors before, of course, but hobbits have a passion for family history, and they were ready to hear it again. Well, so they say, said the Gaffer. You see, Mrs. Drogo, he married poor Miss Primula Brandybuck. She was our Bilbo's first cousin on the mother's side, her mother being the youngest of the old Took's daughters. And Mr. Drogo was his second cousin, so Mr. Frodo is his first and second cousin, once removed either way, as the saying is, if you follow me. And Mr. Drogo was staying at Brandy Hall with his father-in-law, old Master Corbago, as he often did after his marriage, him being partial to victuals, and old Corbadoc keeping a mighty generous table. And he went out boating on the Brandywine River, and he and his wife were drowned, and poor Mr. Frodo, only a child and all. I only heard they went to the water after dinner in the moonlight, said old Noakes, and it was Drogo's weight as sunk the boat. And I heard he pushed him in, and he pulled her in after him, said Sandy Man. And Hobbiton Frodo left an orphan and stranded, as you might say, among those queer Bucklanders being brought up anyhow in Brandy Hall. A regular Warren by all accounts, old Master Gorbagdog never had fewer than a couple hundred relations in the place. Mr. Bilbo never did a kinder deed than when he brought the lad back to live among decent folk. But I reckon it was a nasty shock for those Sackville Bagginses. They thought they were going to get back, and that time when he went off and he thought he was going to be dead. And then he never comes back and orders them off, and he goes off on living, and never looking a day older, bless him. And suddenly he produces an heir and has all the papers made out proper. He's the Sackville Bagginses won't never see the inside of Bag End now, or is it to be hoped not? There is a tidy bit of money tucked away up there, I hear tell, said a stranger, a visitor on business from Mr. Delving in the West Farthing. All on top of the hill is fun. I've done those packed with chests of gold and silver and jewels, by what I've heard. Then you've heard more than I can speak to, answered the gaffer. I know nothing about jewels, but Mr. Bilbo is free with his money, and there seems no lack of it. But I know of no tunnel making. I saw Mr. Bilbo when he came up back a matter of 60 years ago when I was a lad. I not long become prentice. Ooh, my glove farted. Come prentice to old Holman, him being of my dad's cousin. But he had me all a back end, helping him to keep folks from trampling and trapezing all over the garden while the sale was on. And in the middle of it, Mr. Bilbo comes up the hill with a pony and some mighty big bags and a couple of chests. I don't doubt they were mostly full of treasure he had picked up on foreign parts. Why, there must be mountains of gold, they say. But there wasn't enough to fill the tunnels. But my lad Sam will know more about that. He's in and out of Bag End, crazy about stories as old as he is, and he listens to all Mr. Bilbo's tales. Mr. Bilbo had learned him his letters, meaning no harm, mark you, and I hope no harm will come of it. Elves and dragons, I says to him, cabbages and potatoes are better for me and you. Don't go getting mixed up in the business of your betters, or you'll land in trouble too big for you, I says to him. And I might say to others, he added with a look at a stranger and the miller. But the gaffer did not convince his audience. The legend of Bilbo's wealth was now too firmly fixed in the minds of the younger generations of hobbits. But he is likely enough to be adding to what he brought at first, argued Miller, voicing common opinion. He's often away from home. And look at the outlandish folk that visit him, dwarves coming at night, and that old wandering conjurer Gandalf and all. You can say what you like, Gaffer, but Bag's End's a queer place, and its folk are queerer. And you can say what you like about you knowing more than you do of Bodine, Mr. Sandyman, reported the Gaffer, disliking the miller even more than usual. But if that's being queer, and then we could do with a bit more queerness in these parts. There's some not far away that wouldn't offer a pint of beer to friend, if they lived in a hole with golden wealth. But they do things proper at Bag End. Our Sam says that everyone's going to be invited to the party, and there's going to be presents, mark you, presents for all, this very month as is. That very month was September, and as fine as you can ask. A day or two later, rumor, probably started by the knowledgeable Sam, was spread about that there was going to be fireworks. What is more, such has not been seen in Shire for a night as on a century, not indeed since the old took time. Days passed and the day drew nearer. An odd-looking wagon landed with old-looking packages rolled into Hobbiton one even and toiled up the hill to Bag End. The startled hobbits peered out of lamplight doors to gape at it. It was driven by outlandish folk, singing strange songs, dwarves with long beards and deep hoods. A few of them remained at Bag End at the end of the season week in September. Second week in September, a car came in through Bywater from the direction of Brandywine Bridge in broad daylight. An old man was driving it sorts, each labeled with a large red G, and the elf rune. That was Gandalf's marks, of course, and the old man was Gandalf, the wizard, whose fame in the Shire was due mainly to his skills with fires, smokes, and lights. His real business was far more difficult and dangerous, but the Shire folk knew nothing about it. To them, he was just one of the attractions at the party, hence the excitement of the hobbit children. G for grand, they shouted, and the old man smiled. They knew him by sight, though he only appeared in Hobbiton occasionally and never stopped long. But neither they nor any of the oldest of their elders had seen one of the fireworks displays. They now belonged to the legendary past. When the old man, helped by Bilbo and some dwarves, had finished unloading, Bilbo gave a few pennies away, but not a single squib or cracker was forthcoming due to the disappointment of the onlookers. "Run away now," said Gandalf. "You will get plenty when the time comes." Then he disappeared inside with Bilbo, and the door was shut. The oldest hobbit stared in the door in vain for a while, and then made off, feeling that the day of the party would never come. Inside Bag End, Bilbo and Gandalf were sitting at the open window, with a small room looking out west onto the garden. The late afternoon was bright and peaceful. The flowers glowed red and golden. Snapdragons and sunflowers and nasturtiums trailing all over the turf walls and peeping in at the round windows. "How bright your garden looks," said Gandalf. "Yes," said Bilbo, "I'm very fond of it indeed, and all of the dear old Shire, but I think I need a holiday." "You mean to go when your plan now?" "Then I do. I made up my mind months ago, and I haven't changed it." "Very well. It is no good in saying any more. Stick to your plan, your whole plan, mine, and I hope it will turn out for the best, for you and for all of us. I hope so. Anyway, I mean to enjoy myself on Thursday and have a little joke." "Who will laugh at wonders?" said Gandalf, shaking his head. "We shall see," said Bilbo. The next day more carts rolled up the hill, and still more carts. There might have been some grumbling about dealing locally, but that very week orders began to pour out of Bag End for every kind of provision, commodity, or luxury that could be obtained in Hobbiton or Bywater, or anywhere in the neighborhood. People came enthusiastic, and they began to tick off the days on the calendar. And they watched eagerly for the postman, hoping for invitations. Before long, the invitations began pouring out. In the Hobbiton, post office was blocked, and the Bywater post office was snowed under, and voluntary assistant postmen were called for. There was a constant stream of them going up the hill, carrying hundreds of polite variations on "Thank you, I shall certainly come." A notice appeared on the gate at Bag End: "No admittance except on party business." Even those who had or pretended to have a party business were seldomly allowed inside. Bilbo was busy writing invitations, ticking off answers, packing a presents, and making some private preparations of his own. From the time of Gandalf's arrival, he remained hidden from view. Okay, so that's all I'm going to read today. If you guys want, I can continue reading, maybe in a second part. Hopefully you liked it. There weren't too many glove sounds, but I hope what you did hear was nice, or maybe the subtle movements of my hand was nice. So I hope you guys have a wonderful night.